All right, so I think the screen should be up right now. And just to backtrack a little bit, so this is what we'll be going through today. And for those of you who have just arrived, basically this is an H2 ELL, English Language and Linguistics sharing. And we'll be delving into common misconceptions, the syllabus, insight into the material, personal experience with ELL, and related university courses. And I will also end off with a Q&A segment. So yeah, I think I've gone through this now, just now. So bear with me if it's a bit repetitive. I'm just afraid that actually it did, some of you guys missed it, or I was really choppy because of the internet. So yeah, some of you might be thinking that ELL is just like literature. No, in ELL you actually do linguistic analysis, while in Lit you actually do literary analysis. So linguistic analysis, I don't think most of you guys will be familiar with it. So it will be a completely new realm that you have to get used to, and I'll give you a little insight into it later. All right. So some of you might also think that, oh, I shouldn't take H2ELL because it has a low A rate. So not every, sorry, every JC subject is difficult, and the challenges faced in each subject is unique. So it's not to say that H2ELL is insanely hard. That's not true. I think that it's as long as you put your heart and mind to it, you will actually be able to, learn well and perform well in the exam. It's not impossible. And yeah, some of you might also think that ELL is a worse choice than econs. I actually think that this might stem from some sort of Singaporean kiasu parents mindset, because they think econs is more practical, or it open more doors for you if you take it as a contrasting subject, if you're in the science stream, of course. So that's actually not true. There's a lot of real life application to be made. Language is all around us. It is so important to actually be able to critically analyze what information that we are receiving. So it's a different skill set from econs, but it's still equally valuable. All right. So at the same time, I know there are some of you who, like to have extra help outside of school, and maybe the fact that there's no ELL tuition might actually stop you from taking the subject. Um, Here's where I say that you actually have to trust your school, your JC tutors. So if you find trusting them hard, or you're a bit more, kiasu, there's actually still on help online if you actually search for it. So you can ask questions on our Discord server, and if you just do a quick Google search, right, you can actually find a wealth of other resources. And some of you might also have some misconceptions that ELL will put you on a track to like a poor artist kind of life, because it's like, not as useful. Da, da, da. No, there are so many excellent uh, related occupations related to ELL, and you can actually explore that in the future. You are still eligible for, um, medicine, law, dentistry, even if you take it as a contrasting subject. There is no restriction whatsoever, and I will touch more on this later. All right, so your BFF in JC will be something called your learning objectives, and you can find them with a very quick Google search, and just type in like either your subject code or H2 English Language and Linguistics SEAB, and you'll find it. All right, so this is the 2021 one, and yeah, if you look through it, right, it will basically tell you what the subject is all about. So I definitely recommend all of you to actually take a look at this document before you decide whether you want to take this subject, okay? But at the same time, this particular document can be a little bit vague, so that's why I'm sharing, and that's why your JC will also probably share more about the subject when you enter JC. Okay, so yeah, you can take your time to read this when you have the slides, but basically, uh, every school has a different way of teaching ELL. They organize their notes differently. So whatever I'm gonna say now, if you don't see it in your JC next time, don't panic, okay? Because every school has a different way of classifying the topics. But at the end of the day, I'm very sure that each JC, you know, actually teaches everything that you need in order to ace the A-level exam. All right. So the topics taught in J1 would basically focus more on something we call the linguistic toolbox. So these are the very basic things that you actually need in order to do your linguistic analysis. So for instance, understanding of words, morphology, so how words are formed, semantics, which basically means the meaning of words. So you also learn more grammar stuff like syntax, sentence structure, and something we call systemic functional grammar. Y'all can do a quick Google search on that. But basically, it has something to do with the interpersonal, ideational, and textual meta functions, which are, I know, very big terms that might not ring any bells for you. But if you go and do some reading, you'll find that it's actually quite relevant to linguistic analysis. And don't worry, you will learn a lot about it in JC. So other stuff like modality, phonetics, and phonology, even though there is not much emphasis on this. Okay, so there's also exposure to various modes of text, such as the different kinds of written and spoken discourse. So from stuff like advertisements to radio shows, even interviews, that kind of thing. So you learn how to deal with these different kinds of text and analyze them in a linguistic manner. So in J2, it becomes more of like sociolinguistics, which basically talks about language and society, as well, I guess, a little bit of psycholinguistics, but not very specific. All right. So you also learn a bit more about English because, after all, it's English language and linguistics, and not just linguistics. Okay. So for paper two, section A, there will basically be something called there will basically be topics called like history of English, spread of English, pidgins and creoles, language variation and change, language attitudes, English as a global language, language death, and language and technology. And on to section B, it's less about the English, more about the how languages might work, all right, in general. So influence of culture and language on each other, changing perspectives with language, language, social values and attitude, language and identity, language of institutions, persuasive text and rhetoric. Okay, so this is how my JC arranged the topics, but your JC might arrange it differently, but that's fine because all the content that you need to know should be taught in your JC. All right, so moving on, here's the format of the paper because this might be important to some of you who are a bit more, I guess, practical and want to know, how the exam format actually goes before you decide whether you want to take it. So for paper one, section A, you will be given two texts, one spoken discourse, which we call a transcription, and one written discourse. So basically anything that is printed, yeah. And to write a comparative analysis, okay? So for paper one, section B, you'll be given around 3 to 4 texts. My tutors did say that this could change. They could just throw you 5 texts, but it's very unlikely. And basically, these 4 texts, 3 to 4 texts, could be any type of discourse. So based on the given purpose, target audience, and context, you're supposed to write an adapted text of your own, then write an evaluation on it. So there's 2 different aspects to section B. You have to read all the 3 to 4 texts, analyze it, create your own text, and then write a separate commentary on it. And I know this may sound a little bit daunting because, oh my God, how am I going to do that in like all of paper one in like 3 hours? It sounds a bit impossible, but trust me, you'll be given enough time to train up your skills, and there will not be too much of a difficulty in doing decent, at least in the beginning. And you will actually be able to, I'm very confident that you'll be able to at least complete your paper by A levels, as long as you practice enough. All right, so for paper two, section A, you are supposed to write essays on language variation and change based on the given text. Oh, sorry. And paper two, section B, you're supposed to write essays on language, culture, and identity based on two separate questions given. So as you notice, in paper 2, you have 4 questions, but you only have to write 3. So it's basically choose 2 from one section, okay? And then 1 from another section. It's quite, they give you a choice, which is refreshing. So some of you might be thinking, so, okay, after all of this, exam format and topic list, what exactly does this subject want from me? So let me tell you what the main skills you need for H2ELL. Okay, so firstly, it's really just critical thinking, the ability to analyze text through linguistic lens. So yeah, as I mentioned, interpersonal meta function, ideational meta function, textual meta function, all under systemic functional grammar, something you will learn in your time in JC. And stuff like formality, field tenor mode, which is basically a different form of interpersonal, ideational, and textual meta function. Yeah, so it's basically field is like your purpose, tenor is like your relationship between like maybe the speakers, the interlocutors, and then mode is basically how your text looks like, how advertisements have pictures, they have big headers, that kind of thing. Yeah, I will explain more in detail later. So another skill would be being able to see the connection to real life situations and apply linguistic knowledge to everyday interactions. All right, so it's a very, to me, I really find that it's a practical subject, and it is in no way um, less useful than econs. It just teaches you a different kind of useful skill. Okay, so here are some example questions so that you have a better idea of what's going to go on. All right, so you'll be basically training for in your 2 years in JC, you'll be training to answer questions like these. So you can do a quick read. So they give you 2 texts. One is a transcription, one is a written text. So for this one, the written text is an adapted online article from the encyclopedia, whereas the spoken discourse is a YouTube video which features an interview of the Game of Thrones actors. Okay, so yeah, here's what the transcription will look like. And it's not the full thing, it's just a short excerpt. And what you have to do is to slowly, analyze each line and then pick out what the salient points are so that you can actually do your linguistic analysis. All right. So yeah, you can see some very interesting, what do you call it? Text here, like the font is a bit different. So that's actually what we call the IPA spelling, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So what it basically shows is how to pronounce it, how these speakers actually pronounce their words. Yeah. So yeah, text B is just your basic, text that you find online, yeah, on acting. Okay. And then they will definitely give you more than enough to work with to linguistically analyze and write a comparison about. And so for section B, paper 1, they will give you a couple of texts that you have to read, and then based on the purpose here, based on the purpose of the question, you have to actually write your adapted text and commentary. Okay, so yeah, as you can see in 2A, there's the question stem. Yeah, and yeah, so you realize that they also give you text with pictures sometimes, and these pictures are also very meaningful because you can analyze them in a linguistic lens as well. Yeah, so moving on to paper 2. For paper 2 section A, these are some example questions for you to consider. And for paper 2 section B, these 3 questions are also from different topics, by the way, which might come out during the exam. I think these are all past year A-level questions. Yeah. And hopefully, you guys can kind of see how this how ELL is actually going to be examined through this. All right. And some of you might be thinking, wait, we have to know about the Singapore context. Okay, so for ELL, right, it's English, language, and linguistics. And since it's, I think it's a uniquely Singaporean subject, like it's only examined in Singapore. And there's a lot of emphasis on Singlish as well. So we call Singlish Singapore Colloquial English. So you actually learn about this in quite a bit of detail, and honestly, the examiners like to set the paper with some Singlish in it as well. All right, so it was quite interesting and relatable. Yeah, and these are some example from the text, example text for paper 2, and this is actually from one of my school's past year papers, I think. Yeah. As you can see, it's basically like the text you might see in paper 1, but you just have to use a different lens. And the topic is basically more focused. Yeah, so moving on to my personal experience with ELL. So I know you see some letters here, and they don't look like very positive letters. So yeah, I didn't have a very nice time in terms of grades with ELL. So I actually took the subject despite, my parents saying no, despite, my seniors saying no. And I went against all that and I still took the subject because I felt that this was the subject, the contrasting subject that I resonated with the most. It was the subject that I felt was most useful and relevant to me because at early J1, I had sort of an inkling of what I wanted to do in the future. So I felt that doing linguistics at that point of time would make me more interested in, studying the A-level content, making life a bit better for me because I'm not a very sciencey person, to be honest. So actually, ELL was the class that I enjoyed the most. And even though you see all these colorful letters on the screen, I don't regret taking it at all. All right, so I actually started off with like S's and E's in my year 1. Yeah, and it was quite horrifying. Um, but I never felt too panicked about it because I was having so much fun in class. And I also felt that, I still had a runway to improve. Um, and then I moved up to around a D in year 2. And okay, I felt like I was getting a bit better, but a lot of the times, while I did ask a lot of questions in class, when it came back to the exam papers, I was not very proactive in asking my teachers where I went wrong until I got a C during prelims, and I was thinking about it like, if I'm getting a C during prelims, I should be a bit worried for my actual A-level exams, and I was, and it did feel a bit too late, and I was extremely scared. So yeah, I'll move on to the more of the story later. But anyway, all's well. I managed to work through it with my tutor. I had a lot of consultations in like the months leading up to A levels, and so with that, I actually managed to score an A during A levels, despite my terrible grades throughout JC. Yeah, so as long as you do, if you put in your due diligence, you will definitely receive the grade that you deserve. So my main takeaways is always to ask the questions you have in mind. There is no stupid question, and every expert was once a beginner. So for me, right, I was actually very proactive in asking questions during class, and I did it more so for my learning. So that's why my exam papers were always marked in red, and I didn't really learn for the sake of doing the paper. So I actually ended up I could do the linguistic analysis, but sometimes I will not really answer the question. So that's something that I hope you guys can learn from me. Know the requirements of your exam paper, and don't wait a few months, like 1 or 2 months before the actual A levels. Go and ask your tutors for help with respect to the exam papers way beforehand. Okay, yeah, that's one thing I would change if I went back in time. So yeah, get to the root of your problems. Once you find out you have them, don't wait till the month before A levels to solve them. If not, it's not easy to clutch. Yeah. So check in regularly with your tutors to see what your areas for improvement are. So this is another thing that another good habit that I noticed my high scoring friends always had. All right. So you should also adopt a growth mindset. So what matters is not your failure, but how you learn to bounce back. All right, so you need to learn for the sake of learning as well, because often when you focus too much on grades, it will be hard for you to see what you need to do better in order to understand what you need to do in order to understand the content and skills better. All right, so um, enjoy the subject and you will have the willpower to do well. Okay, so for your consideration as well, not everything about this subject is rainbows and butterflies. You will have a lot of reading to do. And I mean a lot, right? I think I graduated with like 3 whole ring files, not the thin ring files, but like the huge ring files of papers because my school likes to print out the readings. Yeah, so you really need to condense the learning points and examples to create concise notes in order for you to have easy revision during the A-level period. Okay, so this is something you need to know. If you don't like reading, right, maybe this might not be the subject for you. Okay, and I know humanities subjects, sometimes the lessons can get a bit dry, so you might have to prep yourself for that and try to you know see the good, even though like you have some boring lessons once in a while. All right, so vague and broad objectives given by Cambridge. So if you look at the SEAB document from just now, you actually realize that actually they don't really say much. Yeah, it's true, they don't say much. So you really have to rely a lot on your JC for streamlining the actual content that you need to know. And once again, there's no actual ELL tuition. So you must rely a lot on your JC tutors, your seniors, and whatever resources you can find online for help. Okay, so my overall evaluation, honestly, as I said before, it was the best decision of my life because I thoroughly enjoyed the subject. It was a subject which lessons and assignments I actually look forward to the most, even after long days of classes. Right? So I think these are skills and knowledge that you pick up, and you don't ever really these skills and knowledge doesn't ever really leave you. All right. So it's like very simple things like media literacy. So questioning everything you see, analyzing it critically, and learning how to think for yourself. What's the purpose of maybe this organization putting up this advertisement? Yeah, so actually you will end up relating everyday things to linguistics. Your classmates and you will find yourself scrutinizing stuff from MRT advertisements to radio shows. So it's a different type of learning and assessment from what you might be used to, because this is not something that you actually are taught in secondary school. So it might take a while for you to get used to lessons and the writing style, but it is equally useful as other contrasting humanities subjects. And yeah, so this is an example of what may what your school may actually use to teach linguistic analysis. So we'll do things like analyze pronouns. So the fact that SMRT actually use the inclusive pronoun we, what are they trying to say? So who is the we? And then you analyze it, and then uncover the purpose of them actually trying to use these pronouns. So that's a very like specific example of linguistic analysis. All right. So another thing would be the placement of the image. So that is also something that you will learn how to analyze. Why is it at the side? Why is it this big? That kind of thing. All right. And sometimes the italicized parts, bold parts are also very important. So these are actually very basic linguistic analysis insights. All right. So uh, what I would say if you want to, uh, if you're actually thinking about taking ELL, is to disregard whatever A rate you see. Okay, you might think, oh my gosh, the A rate is so low. But what you need to think back, what do you want to achieve from studying this subject? Okay, so be intrinsically motivated. So what is daunting is not impossible. I believe when I entered JC, my JC's the most like 1 year my senior, um that batch, I think their A rate was around like 3 out of 10, and it's small class by the way, so it's like 20 people max. So what's daunting is actually not impossible. Despite that, my class actually went on to double the previous A rate. So 6 out of 10 of us actually got an A. So it's not about how well your seniors fare. I think it's really a lot about your personal effort and your mindset when you take the subject. Don't go in thinking that, oh, I don't think I can get A. No, always expect the best from yourself and do your learning to your best ability, and you will get the results that you seek. Okay? So yeah, so some of you might be thinking, oh, but what's the related university courses? So the relevant further studies would actually be obviously linguistics and English. Okay, as you can see, there was a short preview of advertisement just now. You can also go into mass comms, marketing, advertising, that kind of thing. Because after all, you do learn how to communicate to large audiences. All right, and you can also go into law because language is very important um, in legal affairs. Okay, and psychology obviously because psycholinguistics. Why do people say the things they say? And another thing, interesting thing would be speech therapy actually. Yeah, so there's many other courses that are relevant and you can use your ELL skills in. All right, so the major summary would be to check the academic requirements of the uni majors that you are interested in. Okay, so my final advice would be to do your due diligence, to read the SEAB syllabus notes, and attend your JC subject intro session. All right, at least be somewhat sure that this is a subject you will enjoy and have some proficiency in. It shouldn't be your last resort, like when you definitely don't want to take econs, geog, history, lit. Actually, funny story. I had a classmate who took ELL because she thought it was literature. So she went in thinking it was lit, but no, it was not. And she stayed in the class and she ended up liking it, but it could be really bad if you don't actually like the subject. Yeah. So be very sure and be very thorough when you're checking your chosen choices or chosen courses. Okay. So it's not going to be an easy journey, but no JC subject will be a breeze. So choose what you like and believe in, do your best, and let the rest flow. Okay, so if ELL ever gets dry or boring for you, there's a wealth of interesting online resources which you can read up on to remind yourself that there's more to the A-level syllabus. So like everything else, not everything is confined to the exam. You don't learn for the sake of, doing well in exam. Life is more than that. All right, so as a famous person once said, um, yeah, it's actually about drive, it's about power. We stay hungry, we devour. So if you put in the work and put in the hours, you can take what's yours. All right. Okay. A question came in. So is there anything you dislike about ALL? So personally, I mean, the things I disliked about ALL wasn't that much to do with the subject in itself, but rather maybe sometimes how it's carried out in my school. So I actually disliked the timetabling a lot because I don't know about other schools, but at least for my JC, Hwa Chong, not people, sorry, the admin office actually gives you a very strange timetable. So like you have a really long day sometimes, and your lessons will mostly be in the afternoon when you're really tired from other lessons, or you have very short or long breaks suddenly. Yeah. And I think I didn't really like the readings a lot. To be very honest, I didn't read everything. Sometimes you read, and you realize nothing goes into your head. And it's not that I don't like the subject. It's just a lot of words. And yeah, it's a bit painful to actually get the knowledge in. And I guess I dislike the time limit for the exam format as well. For the exam, I mean. So basically, you have 3 hours per paper, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's been a while. And it's really tight for time. And I'll be very honest with you, the first time I finished both papers in full was during A-levels. So it was really quite a clutch. So I hope you guys actually have it easier. I'm actually a very slow writer, so I don't think I'm a very good example. Yeah, so that's about it. That's about all I don't really like about ELL. But yeah, I like linguistics a lot. That's why I took it in uni as well. All right, so let me check the other questions. So are classes more discussion and group-based or individual-based? Okay, so I think this will really depend on the school that you go to. For me in Hwa Chong, classes are actually quite discussion and group-based. So okay, because I think you guys will be a little bit affected by COVID as well. Even when we went online, when I was J2, our tutors actually still made the effort for us to do group work. So we would like work together with our classmates online through Zoom or what do you call it, Google Meet. Yeah, we will talk about text, and then we try to analyze it together and write something. Yeah, there are also group projects, and I feel that my tutors were very they were not very top down, so we could always have like vibrant discussions during class. But in terms of the individual side, it's really about the readings. So if you go into class without doing your readings, right, sometimes you might feel a bit lost and might not be able to get the most out of the group discussions. Yeah, so but this one is really dependent on your JC lah. So you can ask around from other schools, but I think generally you should have around the same experiences. Yeah. So is it still a good idea to take ELL if you only like a few aspects of the subject? Um, I think personally, I'm a bit more practical. So I would take the subject. I would still take ELL if I actually feel that out of the other choices, this is the best one for me. So if I'm not exactly too sure on the subject itself, I'll weigh out the pros and cons for every possible subject I can take, and then I'll see whether ELL is still the one for me. Yeah. Um, but generally, you should have a certain level of interest if you really want to, get through the 2 years and do well for the subject. Or be confident that, maybe you can end up liking the stuff that you did not initially like. Yeah. Do you have tips for studying for ARL? Wow, it's been a while. Okay, yeah. So if you want to do well for exams, right? Uh, it's really about the essay plans. So you write your notes in terms of essay plans. So you kind of predict what kind of questions will come out. So I'm talking about mainly for paper two, because those are the ones where it's more open-ended. They give you a very broad question, and they give you some text to help to act as like a springboard of ideas. So for paper two, it's very easy to um, create good notes for, because you can just write it in terms of essay plans. You just copy paste like one question from one topic, that kind of thing, because they generally ask the same few things for under each topic. So one question from, let's say, language and institution can have overlapping points with another question under the same topic. Yeah, so if you just do like one essay plan for each like mini topic, right, I think you're pretty set. Yeah, and then you just extract relevant examples from your readings and have a whole like compiled document like that. And I think you'll be good for paper two. For paper one, it's more about knowing how to apply. And actually, no, before you know how to apply, right, you need to know how to analyze. So you need to really get to writing. You need to write a lot. You need to learn how to write fast, and you need to learn how to write, smart. Okay. So once you get the writing and the theory done, and you are able to identify um, uh, the linguistic analysis, the things you need to do for linguistic analysis in your text, then you actually be able to start to compile maybe advertisements, brochures, transcriptions for your own use, and then you can go and do your practice and annotate on your own if you don't think your school gives you enough practice. Yeah, and generally I think your school should give you sufficient notes to write about, to actually do practice on, and like memorize some common things that you can analyze in certain types of text. Yeah, so that's about it for tips. And one more thing, please ask questions. If you're not sure, ask. Yes. So is it hard to get an A for ARL? Is it possible to mark for an A through practice? All right, so I would say if you look at the A rate, you would think it's hard to get an A for ARL, but what I felt was that it wasn't really different from like my other subjects, you know. Like if you put in the work you need to put in, you will get your good grades. Um, but that being said, I did have a tough time throughout JC, as I said before. I only got an A at A levels. Before that, it was very colorful. It was like red and orange. Like it's E's, S's, D's, C's at my peak. Yeah. So it can be hard, trying to get to the A. Um, but it's most definitely possible to mark for an A because in the month leading up to A levels after prelims, right, I really just set myself down every 2 days or something. Every week I'll make sure I do like at least like two practice papers or questions, something like that. And I just time myself and I write. And I write, and I sent it to my teacher. And then she was very kind. She was very supportive, and she would actually mark and give me feedback. So yeah, it is possible to mark for an A through practice, but you must be smart about your practice. Don't keep practicing the wrong things. Always, check in with your teacher, check in if you're doing the right things, or what your areas for improvement actually are, so that you can actually mark smart. And sometimes you don't have to mark that hard, if you get what I mean. Yeah. So, do you have any English competitions to recommend to join in the holidays? Um, Holidays, I'm not very sure. I'm quite removed from like the JC secondary school scene. But I'm pretty sure that there's like, if you're talking about English only, I'm pretty sure there will be stuff like creative writing competitions. But I'm not very sure about anything else. Like usually there's the writing thing. If I'm not wrong, there's the UK one. I don't know if it's over the holidays or over the school year. Um, Basically it's an international competition where you send in like creative writing or argumentative essay, something like that. And yeah, if you do well, you get a prize from like a very like well known like UK organization, something like that. That's all I know. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe you can ask it in our Discord server and someone will know. Yeah. So what should I consider between while choosing between lit and EL? Okay, I say first. Lit wasn't in the books for me, so I really did not think about considering between these two. But what I would think is that if you're someone who took lit in secondary school, right? Um, ELL analysis is very different because in lit you analyze like symbolism, you analyze imagery, that kind of thing, right? You analyze what the words actually show. Whereas in ELL, you break down, the the formation of like sentences, the formation of meaning. So like it's more it's really it's rather technical for ELL, whereas lit is I would feel is a bit more fluffy. So ELL you really need to know like your terminology in order to score, and you need to know like your famous linguists, and you need to know and quote these people actually when you're writing. So it's a little bit scientific, not gonna lie. Yeah. So for lit, um, I think you have in JC you have to know some text. You have like fixed text, something like that, and then yeah, each school has different texts or something also, and then you have to check with the JCs, like whether it's a text that you want to do, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, but you can also ask this. You can also ask about lit in the Discord channel, and then maybe you'll find more things to write on your pros and cons list in order to consider whether you should take lit or ELL at JC. How much time do you spend revising ELL in relation to other subjects you take? To be very honest, right? Um, I think it's the same. Like across, I really tried to spend the same amount of time on ELL, together with other subjects, especially during the A-level period. But I guess during J1, I studied ELL a bit less lah. Cause contrasting subject and kind of thing. But that's a very bad mindset to have. I would say if you really want an exact number, I think every week I might spend around like, I don't know, 5-6 hours on ELL. Yeah, if I'm really in like the studying season. Sometimes it'll be a bit more, yeah. But it's not about the quantity lah, it's about your quality. Yeah.